Warlords Weekly.
Hey, what's up guys? Bajheera here with Jen Beans.
Hi!
And we're bringing you guys another episode of the Warlords Weekly.
Warlords Weekly.
And this week we're going to be talking about some of the racial trait changes that we're going to be seeing in World of Warcraft for Warlords of Draenor.
Yeah, because here was my thing, is and this is what Blizzard has explained as well, is that a lot of times when you were choosing a character to play with your class or whatever, sometimes the racial traits were really important when it came to what race you were going to choose. Such as when I decided to do PvP stuff on my Warlock, I immediately went for the human because of the every man for himself, when in reality I probably would have enjoyed another race, let's just say. So,
well, they want to at least leave it open for that sort of thing, so that you're not picking your class or your race solely based off of
the strongest traits
whatever
that were out there.
Yeah. So yeah, like Jenny was saying, sometimes it felt like we were making a lot of our decisions in terms of which race we wanted to play based off of their racial talents. So like Jenny was saying, for example, when she went Alliance, she went human because you get the free action trinket. And for me, when I was going Horde, it was pretty much really Orc was my only option for playing a warrior for the stun reduction and for the attack power buff. So it was kind of a no-brainer in terms of what I wanted to play. Now, I am perfectly happy playing an Orc on Horde and a human on Alliance, but there are some things like, man, I really love the way Night Elves attack. I like their attack animations. They do flips and stuff. It's freaking overpowered in terms of their coolness value. So who knows? Maybe I'd like to go Night Elf at some point. But I know that I'm a little bit held back from making those sort of decisions just based off of aesthetics, just cool things like they're doing flips or attack animations, or maybe I feel just really attached to dwarves for some reason, and I just really want to play a dwarf, but because of their racial talents, their racial abilities, I'm sort of held back from that because it would put me at a disadvantage in terms of PvP or whatever. And Blizzard wants to make it a possibility and an option, a real option for us to pick whatever race we'd like to play, just because we think it's cool, and have neat racial abilities attached to that race, but not have those racial abilities really, force us into any sort of decisions or disallow us from making decisions just based off of what we want to play.
Yeah. So, we decided that we'll go over each of the changes that they have done to the racial traits. So what they've done is they've brought some kind of more, they've either increased some of the traits, they have removed some completely that were obsolete or kind of just not really needed anymore, or they've also brought some down to a more even level with all the other classes to make sure that when you are choosing your race that it's something that you kind of feel even across the board when it comes to choosing them.
Yeah.
So, first up we have the Blood Elves, and the Blood Elves had a couple things different. The first one is Arcane Acuity, and that is a new passive racial that allows your crit to be increased by 1%.
Right.
So that's pretty nice.
That sounds like
pretty good for Blood Elves. The other thing they did is they changed Arcane Torrent to restore 20 runic power, 1 holy power, or 3% mana for mages, priests, and warlocks. But the rest of it's unchanged. So they just kind of changed like the way that you're getting your increase in your stats and stuff.
I don't play a Blood Elf warrior, but I'm pretty sure they get rage. I'm just not sure how much. Is it like 15 rage or 10 rage? You Blood Elf warriors out there can tell me how much it is, but I'm pretty sure that's a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the rest of it's unchanged, so I'm wondering if that was already incorporated. I have a Blood Elf Death Knight, but I don't really play too much.
You don't do a whole lot of arcane powering.
I just tank and I use it for silencing. So.
Yeah. but I guess if that's remaining the same, although 20 runic power, maybe that means. The reason I'm asking about the rage thing is because.
Yeah, well, and then also the focus for hunters.
Yeah, I know.
There's Blood Elf hunters as well.
Yeah. So anyway, so Arcane Torrent's remaining the same. That's cool. The increased passive 1% crit chance. That sounds a lot like what Worgens have. So at least in some way it remains balanced in terms of what other classes have as well.
Across factions as well.
But 1% crit is pretty, I don't know, it's pretty nice.
Good.
Could make a big difference. Even though, like, crit damage, we'll talk about that later because there are actually some races that are getting crit damage modifiers. But crit damage, I mean, the crit damage is being brought down from 200 to 150 on players, I think. So that'll be a little bit different. But I don't know, critting is still nice.
A part of the item stat squish, which we did in a previous video, if you'd like to check it out.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So you feel good about Blood Elves?
I think Blood Elves will be, they'll be alright. They're already, I like their racials from before, so I feel like this is a fine change.
I feel like my opinions of Blood Elves will remain unchanged, frankly.
Always want to kill them.
They're like the gnomes of they're like the horde gnomes.
The next race that we have are the Draenei. Right? Draenei? Draenei?
Draenei?
Draenei.
Draenei?
Draenor.
Draenei.
Draenei.
Regardless, the people of my heart. Where it all began.
It was true.
I picked those guys, believe it or not, for their racials, sort of. The reason I picked to play, I always say Draenei. I don't know why. I think it's Draenei.
Draenei.
The reason I picked my Draenei warrior, Bajheera, was because, one, he looked like Archimonde. You really can't argue with that. Two, they were the biggest alliance race in terms of just raw height and size and burliness. So I was like,
they
hey,
had big shoulders.
Big chest, big guns. So I figured that if I was the biggest guy on the battleground, it's more likely to get healed, right? all them, you know, lovely healers were like, look at that big warrior just tearing into people.
Look at that. He's like the biggest one.
With his golf swing you know, two-handed weapon, animation. I figured I'd get healed. Number 3, they had an extra chance to hit, right? And I was like, oh my gosh, that's OP! I want to pick that, because that way I can hit people more often. And they also had a self-heal, which is like, wow, that is the most insane thing. A warrior with a self-heal. That is out of control OP.
And it's going to be even cooler, let's just say that.
That's my class. Let's do this. I have since switched to human, for the reasons we discussed earlier.
We did.
So that's an example of me making a decision based off of, another example based off of pure race alone. However, I might be leveling me up a little Draenei warrior here pretty soon, because the heroic presence, which was their hit percentage increase, was now being changed to scaling strength, agility, or intellect increase. Of course, that's gonna vary with your primary stat, right? Mm-hmm. And in terms of the scaling per level, I'm thinking it's either gonna be like a flat percent for the whole time, and it just sort of scales through level, like, because as you level up and your base value becomes higher, you know, your stat will scale up because it's getting multiplied by, you know, whatever. Mm-hmm. Or, you know, you'd have like, you know, 1% increase to strength from levels 1 to 20, a 2% increase to strength from levels 2 to 40. That's complete speculation. I'm just making that up. But either way, there's going to be a scaling increase to your strength, agility, or intellect. And the other cool thing, which is the Gift of the Naru, that is still in the game. However, instead of having that healing take place over 15 seconds, the same amount of healing is going to take place over 5 seconds. So that's actually pretty huge.
That's going to be really nice.
Yeah, and I'm not even really all that much kidding about leveling a Draenei warrior now, because that could be fun. Because it could be, one, it's like funny because it's like a throwback, but two, like scaling strength and like a pretty legit self heal on top of things like Rallying Cry. Mm-hmm. Although Rallying Cry did get nerfed a little bit. I noticed that. Blizz. It's okay. We should. We're not gonna make a. We're not gonna make a little.
A QQ video.
We're not gonna make an aside right now. What we're not gonna do is talk about how Rallying Cry got nerfed to 15% and Shield Wall has been removed. We're not gonna talk about
digress,
that.
Baby.
I didn't. Yeah, but I'm not gonna digress.
Oh, okay.
I wasn't gonna do that. I said I wasn't, and I'm not going to. But anyway.
Oh, man.
So the self heal is over 5 seconds, which is pretty huge. And the scaling strength or agility or intellect is going to be a pretty big deal. I feel like as well, we'll see. I don't think any of these are going to be that big of a deal, just because they don't want them to be that big of a deal. That's pretty cool.
They're pretty even, you know.
What do you think about those Draenei changes?
I really like the Gift of the Naru, and I've always been a fan of the Draenei. They're cool. I have a priest, and I've always wanted her to be a Draenei, but she's still a horde. So. Who knows? Maybe I'll have to make the change, because now it doesn't feel as bad going to the Dirty Scum Alliance.
What?
I'm just kidding.
Alliance dogs.
I love them. I already, yeah. But Yeah, so we'll see. It kind of makes me want to be a Draenei more.
Maybe now with all these like even keel racial changes, I can just make a warrior of literally every race.
Of every race that you can.
That'd be swell. Maybe I'll make a dwarf warrior,
which is our next race. I almost say class. Race.
Yeah, I do that too.
Race. So some of the things for them that have changed is Crackshot and Mace specialization are removed. We're gonna see that a lot. A lot of your like specializations in maces, swords, daggers, that kind of stuff are removed. And personally, the way I think of it is that if you remember back, oh, were you gonna say something?
I was gonna say something very mean. It's like Blizzard says, "You're not special anymore.
You're not special."
Your specializations are gone.
Your specializations are gone. However, the way I think of it is like, to me, those are very much related to back in the Burning Crusade, back in, I think even Wrath is like when it was removed, where you had to have like your weapon specialization like leveled, like it's skill leveled.
Yeah.
And so like you could even like do unarmed skill leveling so that you could actually hit while you were like punching unarmed and that kind of stuff. There are achievements for those, and I believe they are now feats of strength because it's no longer in the game.
Yeah.
So in my opinion, I kind of see that as falling under that category where it was kind of like something that wasn't necessarily needed anymore. So they're removing a lot of those.
The way I see that a little bit, in addition to what you're talking about, is they want you to be able to pick whatever race you want just because you like the look, the feel, the lore behind that race. And they probably also want to let you use whatever kind of weapon type you want. Like you might want to be an orc using a sword instead of an axe. Although you can still transmog into them, but I think maybe, you know, if you get a weapon drop in PvE and it's a sword and you're an orc, you're not like, crap! Or your guild master's like, you're an orc, you don't get that. Give it to the Blood Elf warrior. And he's like, yeah! They don't want to do that. They want you to be able to, you know, make use of whatever sort of weaponry you want.
Yes.
I'm cool with that.
I like that. Next up for dwarves, we have Might of the Mountain, which increases your crit bonus damage and healing dealt by 2%, which I think that's pretty good. I really like that. And you have Bajheera, the paladin,
It's true.
which
He'll benefit from both.
both.
So, question.
Yes.
It says crit bonus damage and healing dealt. Does that mean a crit healing or healing in general? Probably crit healing.
Crit healing.
Crit damage and crit healing.
This says and healing dealt. I want to say it's crit.
I imagine it's double crit, yeah.
Personally.
So Bajheera with all his crit city Bajheera will be critting people with his Templar's verdict and throwing super huge wogs and stuff. And this is kind of what I was talking about earlier, where the crit damage percentage is being brought down to 150. But you know, if you have a dwarf with 2% crit increase and then you put the meta gem in there, provided the meta gem that gives you crit damage is still going to be in the game, because it might not. But then you have an extra 5% crit damage, which I don't know, that could be significant. Who knows?
Yeah.
Anyway.
And then their Stormform ability, I believe, is getting a very, very cool thing. A very nice thing. So it will now remove magic and curse in addition to poison, disease, and bleed damage, along with reducing damage by 10% for 8 seconds, and you still can't cast it while you're in CC.
Okay.
But they've included the magic and the curse, which is just awesome.
A little wild, actually, because that's going to be dispelling what, like, you could dispel. Could you dispel yourself out of a Nova?
UA? Like.
I mean,
and not get feared.
That'd be scary. Well,
like
UA damages you though. Like,
but would it
fears
if you stormformed it?
Maybe. Yeah. Like, is it a dispel or does it just make you remove? Is it removed?
It's removes, but yeah, does it dispel or does it actually remove? Because that would be great in PvP as well.
That would suck to dispel UA and kill yourself.
There, you know?
Yeah, but what if you dispel UA and kill yourself?
It depends on if it takes the damage or not, because you're Stormform, and you take an additional reduced damage.
Yeah, but UA can hit for like 150k.
That's now. We're talking about...
Oh yeah, I know.
We're talking about Draenor times.
But if you're talking about the stat squish, it's still a chunk of your health. But I see what you're saying. Either way, that's pretty cool. It removes poison, disease, bleed, and magic damage. So, or magic in general. So you can take off dots. You could take off. That's what I'm wondering.
That's like the Nova.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. Is you can take off Novas or like
it doesn't say like nature.
Well, you can't cast it while in CC.
True.
So you can't take off polymorph.
True.
But what if you like precasted stone form, and like you got hit with the poly, and then the stone farm registered, and then it broke you out. Like I could see some sick skill plays with that sort of thing.
That would be weird.
Like you know how you can blade storm like kidney shots and stuff like that. Like I wonder if it's gonna work like that.
I don't know.
We'll see some like OP dwarf montages where they're like stone
Bajheera
forming polymorphs and stuff.
Ham,
oh yeah, Bajheera completely
just
rock that.
Insane.
Yeah, I don't feel so bad about Bajheera now.
Yeah.
Because I was like, man, if I make Bajheera 90, I'm gonna have to make him human, ruin the whole storyline.
But yeah, so
I'll cut you up!
really cool.
Look at me now! Would not work. But anyway.
So next up we have the gnomes.
Okay.
And
yeah, I guess I'll talk about the gnomes.
guess you'll talk about
Fine, how did I get stuck with the gnomes?
Mm.
Whatever. Actually, I don't know, man. The gnomes, they're getting some stuff. So we talked about all the weapon specializations were being removed, which includes the short blade specialization for gnome skis. Their expansive mind thing, it's gonna increase every resource that you have in terms of like, so instead of just increasing mana, it's gonna, if you're a rogue, it's gonna increase your energy. If you're a hunter, it's gonna increase your focus. If you're a warrior, it's gonna increase your rage. And of course, if you're a death knight, it's gonna increase your runic power by 5%. So you're gonna have like 105 rage, 105 runic power, 105 energy, things like that. However, I guess if you're like a, which spec is it? Assassination that gets 120 energy?
I don't know. I don't play rogue ever.
One of your specs gets 120 energy, and that's gonna mean you get even more, which is nuts.
Nuts.
But
That'd be good.
Regardless, so you get increased maximum, resource for your class, which is kind of cool. That could make a difference.
It could.
I definitely could see that. And their escape artist, the cooldown is going down from 1.5 minutes, so minute 30, to 1 minute. So that's actually kind of a big deal, I think.
I'm thinking like in RPGs.
I mean, just in general.
That might be really good.
It'd be good in general, I think.
Yeah.
And then Nimble Fingers increases their haste by 1%. So then, okay. But the other ones, the fact that you get increased resource and you get an escape artist on a lower cooldown, and gnomes are like getting like really cute in terms of their like in terms of their
remodel.
Yeah, their remodel. We could be seeing some gnome skis out there, man. So the Horde rejoice. There will be plenty more gnomes to slay.
To hunt.
Yeah. It's kind of a big deal. I don't know what you think about that, but I think both of those, the expansive mind change and the escape artists, are kind of a big deal.
Yeah, definitely. I think that makes them pretty strong.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah. So the next race we're going to talk about, they're also kind of the little guys.
The Sharties.
Yeah, the Shorties. Is the Goblins. And they only got one real kind of change. To me, they still feel a little weak. They just feel more of like a support or a utility.
Yeah, I mean the Goblin thing is, the jump is cool, but...
Yeah, the jump is cool and the rocket for extra damage. But their time and money now grants a 1% increase to haste. It's changed from like their attack speed and spell haste. Yeah, so it's just all across the board haste instead.
Just balancing it out, makes sense.
And I'm actually leveling a Goblin Shaman, so that might be alright.
Oh yeah?
That might be good.
Horde scum.
What? She's cute. She's sassy.
Yeah, so we've been talking a lot about, the humans sort of dominate the sort of racial pool for the Alliance. Mm-hmm. And I don't really see that changing much, because all that's happening to humans is, of course, their mace and sword specialization is going to be being removed, which is like, okay, everybody's getting theirs removed. Yeah. But their human spirit no longer increases your spirit by 3%, which is like, what am I gonna do now? My warrior, my out of combat regen is gonna be so bad. It's like, who cares? As my warrior, do not care about spirit. What is gonna be nice though is that instead of increasing spirit by 3%, you're gonna be able to increase 2 of your secondary stats of your choosing for their human spirit, and it's gonna of course go up per level. But anyway, so. The fact that you get to choose which 2 secondary stats you want makes a lot of sense to me. But I think that's the kind of thing that you're going to pick right from the beginning, don't you think?
You either pick, well, this is my thing, is because they kind of had this little side note where they're not sure like how they're going to implement this. So this is my idea of the options that they have, is they'll either do that where like you can choose something, like you can be like, well, I want, like I'm a priest, a human priest, I want my spirit and I want my something else, my haste or my crit or mastery, whatever it is.
Yeah, so like for a word, I'd want crit mastery or
Yeah.
crit haste. I mean, whatever.
Yeah, but
haste could be good.
also it could also be something where they just kind of pre-choose it for you depending on your spec that you choose. So
That's true.
If it's something where you're like, well, I'm going to be like a Blood Death Knight, then you're gonna want mastery and
it'll make that decision for you.
Else. Yeah.
That would suck though, because for some reason Blizzard is obsessed with haste for warriors. Like haste is always on our gear and it's so crappy. But haste might actually be good. If you guys watched my Warlords of Draenor Warrior Updates video, haste could actually be pretty sick. So I mean, one of the things I'm wondering is if we're gonna be able to choose it at any point, or like at character creation, we say I'm always gonna want crit mastery, and then you can never change it. But I think the fact that you can pick them is cool, because definitely depending on what class you're trying to play, like your secondary stat priority definitely will change.
Maybe that's something that they can like utilize the old class trainers.
Yeah.
You can like go back.
I'd like to
and,
change
like,
my.
change your.
You go talk to Varian Rin. My king. I would like to be crit haste now.
Like to specialize.
Bestows
into
it upon
something
you.
different.
Yeah. But one of the things we're not seeing with humans is, and I'm a little bit surprised, is that every man for himself is not mentioned.
Unchanged.
Not mentioned.
Which will be interesting when we get to Undead as well, because
That's
as we
true.
know, they kind of have similar
true.
abilities, but
So
you gotta wait. Till
humans, if anything, just got buffed. I'd say.
They might.
So.
Just made like one of their talents a little more usable for other classes than what like caster classes. So. Yeah, so we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, speaking of another alliance race that I feel like did get buffed and might warrant another warrior.
The Night Elves, which you love their animation.
They're
like
so cool. They're both so OP. Male Night Elves and female Night Elves are the coolest animations.
They're
like
pretty. I love my Druid as a Night Elf. Absolutely, she's gorgeous.
They're so sick.
Yeah. So what they've done is they have added quickness,
OP.
which increases movement speed by 2% in addition to dodge chance by 2%.
That is wild.
So it's movement speed. So like whether you're in travel form, on your mount, just
that's
running away.
That's what we're thinking. Yeah.
You have a 2% increase in movement speed.
Yeah, and that could be huge. Being able to catch and slow your opponent, or not being able to catch and slow your opponent, is like matchmaking and match breaking in PvP. So if you can, I don't know like how much 2% movement speed is gonna look like in terms like actually in the game.
Yeah.
But I can definitely see if somebody's like lagging and scooting away from you and they're Night Elf, that's gonna piss me all the way off, dude. But you know, the thing is like 2% movement speed might not sound like much when you're just walking around, but like a rogue and sprint or something like that, 2% movement speed on top of the boost they're already getting could be huge in terms of like not being able to catch them. So Night Elves, man, might be seeing one.
They have something else that's super interesting.
This is kind of weird.
And this is something that like we can talk about either later on at the end while we go over like maybe some questions, or if we want to talk about it now. But they have a new trait called Touch of a Loon. It's a passive that increases haste by 1% at night and crit by 1% at day. So I'm thinking this is gonna go off of like your server realm or whatever. So like 12 and 12, like you're gonna have, or whatever time they choose, they're gonna have it where you either benefit from haste or you benefit from crit.
Yeah, that is very strange to me, I think. Because one of the things that you were talking about is how that might affect like raid or RBG times.
Yeah, because I mean, who's to say like, you know, depending on like your race makeup for your group and that kind of stuff.
Level
but, like,
of min-maxing.
Yeah, you know, and what specs you're playing. Who knows? Like, if you need that crit for your raid, if you need that haste for your raid, depending on, and especially, you know, like I was saying, the different classes that you're playing and that kind of stuff. I mean, maybe that's going to affect it somewhat.
I would rather have crit all the time on, like, my warrior, but, you know, whatever. I guess that the reason they might be doing that is, one, I mean, it's kind of cool. They're the only like, races.
It feeds into the lore as well.
They're the only race that actually does that, depending on time of day. Like, something changes about them. But the other thing is, if they had crit all the time, it might be like pretty strong for like a warrior or something. But I don't know what like, you know, some classes might prefer haste.
Yeah.
So
well, it
like,
depends.
like maybe like a resto druid.
Well, what would you think with your warrior? How they're trying to implement haste like a fury? Like you play what, fury
Yeah.
by night and arms by day?
No, we want crit all the time. But that's the thing is that I don't know. I mean, it could be interesting, and like you were saying, depending on the level of min maxing that your raid wants to do, you guys stack night elves and just crit the heck out of mobs you know, later at night or whatever, or during the day.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's an interesting thought. I think it's kind of cool.
I feel like that would be mostly something worrisome by like the top rating guilds.
Yeah.
Especially when you're in that race to compete to see who's getting world first, server first,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. Because having a night elf on your team that either has that crit buff or that haste buff, depending on what's needed, that could actually, like, you know, many times they wipe it like 1% or so low, and
so
that could do it. I mean, and it could just be the time of day that you do it at.
Yeah, so we're making a big deal about 1%, and I know you guys are thinking that, like, some of you guys might be thinking, you know, 1% is not gonna make a huge deal, especially with the Warlords of Draenor and the stat squish. It's not gonna be that big of a deal. But what Jenny's just mentioned is that it actually can be huge, especially when you're, you know, things come down right to the wire, and those, you know, those high-end rating guilds do make that min-max assessment, and that can make a big deal. So who knows?
Yeah, definitely. So we'll see what happens with them. But I think you would be interested in some of the orc changes,
right?
Which is what we're going to talk about.
So my boys in the horde, my orcs. Axe specialization is being removed. We already talked about that, and I imagine along.
You'll still get to use them.
Yeah, you can still use them.
Not a specialization.
Right, but it's not. I'm not sure if it was mentioned, but along with the axe specialization, it means claws too. So all the specializations in terms of weapon specializations are being removed. Command now increases pet damage by 1%, and I'm pretty sure that's coming down from what, like 3 or 5 or something.
I think it is.
Yeah, either way. So your pets aren't gonna be doing quite as much damage. So hunters and death knights and warlocks, and I guess mages and everybody has pets. I'm sorry, except I'm not sorry to the mages.
Is there orc mages?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Not sorry to the orc mages out there, you scum. But anyway, your pet's gonna be dealing a little bit less damage. And hardiness, pretty much orcs are just getting nerfed. Hardiness now reduces the duration of stun effects by 10%, down from 15%. Now, before you guys freak out and all start pounding the table and getting your axes out and ready for war against Blizzard developers, there's gonna be so many, fewer stuns in the game. You're gonna spend a lot less time stunned in general.
Definitely.
So remember, they're trying to cut down on the CC in general. So that means less stuns in general, which means that even if you're only getting 10% stun reduction, you're still gonna be spending less time stunned in general. So such a strong reduction with a lot less stuns in the game would be a little bit too strong probably. Yeah. But 10% stun reduction is still pretty huge. So don't freak out too much about that. And all these changes for Warlords of Draenor, there's two things to keep in mind. One, they're all subject to change. Two, you have to keep a wide view of what's happening. Everything is going to be going under big changes. They're kind of slimming down a lot of the CC, slimming down the damage. Everything is getting changed to make things a little bit more even. And I think this is one of those changes that reflects that. Yeah. I think it's a good change. Did we get any mention of the attack power thing?
No.
So that's probably still going to be just fine.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Should be fine.
Cool deal.
Yes. So next up we have
the other big brawling.
The big brawny men, which is going to lead into actually one of their traits. But the Tauren. They are just the cutest little things. I actually have a Tauren named Moo Jen.
Moo Jen.
One day I will level her.
And Bajheera started off as a Tauren too. No, he's an orc.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
But because I changed my my Tauren warrior to orc due to the racials.
Yeah. But so Brawn is one of their new traits. It's a new racial that increases crit strike bonus damage and healing by 2%.
A lot like the dwarves.
Yes. So it's gonna be really nice, and I feel like you do see a lot of old school like I'm thinking healing classes. Not only druids, I mean, because a lot of Tauren druids are around, but like Tauren priests and that kind of stuff.
Right.
Maybe we'll
Paladins.
see that.
Paladins crit a lot.
Yeah, I do see a lot of Tauren paladins. A little bit, but I'm thinking underdog, like Tauren priests, man. Let's see it happen. And
the only thing, Tauren, their brawn racial is a lot like the dwarves, but they're also getting another racial that looks a lot like something that another class has, which is called plane striding. So you'll recognize this from Worgen. They are going to be able to drop down on all fours and just run around. JK.
Wow. I was like, where are you getting this? This is amazing.
That is not in the notes.
like, wow.
But you watch.
You watch.
That'll be in the game.
That was actually in the original, I think like alpha version of Vanilla WoW.
Yeah.
They actually did that.
Yes. That'd be funny as hell, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Plane striding.
Plane
Your
striding.
Tauren drops down on all fours and just hoofs it. Sorry, that's not in the notes, but I couldn't help myself.
Alright, so they have Endurance, which now increases stamina scaling by character level instead of increasing your base health by, I think it was 5%.
Right.
So that'll be nice, and it's something that we definitely have seen across the board when it comes to a lot of these changes, is that the scaling by character level.
Yeah, so it's a similar idea, similar mechanic. You're gonna have more health. It's just not like your health. The number that's getting modified is not your health directly. It's gonna be your stamina. So
Yeah.
similar effect.
So that'll be interesting for them.
Yeah.
I think it's more of just like they're evening it out for them.
Right.
More than anything.
I think so too. But okay, so the next race that we're gonna be talking about, another horde race.
The voodoo man.
It's gonna be the trolls. Their weapon specialization Deadeye has been removed, but they're also getting some. I don't know. The second one is kind of a nerf too.
Yeah.
But berserking is gonna be down from berserking. Their haste increase is gonna be down from 20% to 15%, and I think that's just to sort of balance it out, like overall with everything that's gonna be happening in Warlords of Draenor. Still a pretty strong haste cooldown ability if you want to use that. But the second thing is that Beast Slaying, it used to increase your damage against beasts, which is kind of funny because sometimes you could do more damage to people, like if you were able to stun them in travel form, or if you could stun them in like Ghost Wolf form, you could do more damage to them, which is kind of funny. But now Beast Slaying is going to increase the experience that you earn from killing beasts by 20% instead of increasing damage dealt to beasts by 5%. So
that's interesting.
I think we're going to see a lot of people just farming boars outside of Orgrimmar from 0 to 100 now.
Well, that's what I was thinking, is like, does that
boosted.
mean like, is that going to make people want to level
Yeah.
troll and then maybe change later on because you do get that increase?
Because like,
I mean, you know.
how many mobs like during the leveling experience are really beasts? Like how often? It's just like a little boost. Like I don't think it's gonna be game breaking, unless Draenor is like Nagrand, and it's just nothing but like just gigantic beasts, and you just like level to 100 the first day.
Well, I believe they're actually removing the server first like level 100s and that kind of stuff. They're not going to have that, from what I've heard in other little podcasts and that kind of thing.
We'll see.
So to get the achievement part of it, maybe that's not that important. But I wonder with having a troll and leveling it quicker, even if it's marginally better, maybe more people will pay attention to that.
I don't know. It's an idea, because what we've been talking about this whole time is they don't want you to be making your choices based off of the racial perks and bonuses that you get. So hey, if you want to play a troll, this is something that you happen to get. Whether it's going to be something that's like, I have to be troll so I can get more experience from beasts. Probably not worth it.
Yeah. Now, last but certainly not least, which is what we kind of like touched on with the humans, was the Undead race. Now, they have a few things going on.
Yeah, I'm not gonna like this one, guys.
The Will of the Forsaken cooldown has been increased to 3 minutes, up from 2. Which is really strange to me. It is super strange to me that humans are keeping their everyman for themselves, like... So far at a 2-minute cooldown, but they've increased Will of the Forsaken to 3.
Yeah, and I have to think that this is a similar idea to the Orc thing, where there's gonna be a lot fewer CCs in the game, so you don't need a CC breaker that often. But Will of the Forsaken only broke things like Fear Charm and all that. Yeah. So I'm not really sure what they're thinking. Sleep, yeah. I'm not really sure what they're thinking with that, but I imagine it's somewhere along the lines of there's less CC in the game, you don't need a specific CC breaker as often. But then you have to think about, well, what's up with every man for himself then?
Yeah, not having... I mean, but that's more like the roots and that kind of stuff, correct? Stun.
Well, I mean, it's everything, you know. It's just everything. It's just a PvP trinket. But it does share a cooldown with the PvP trinket though, which is one of the reasons maybe why they're leaving it alone. And Will of the Forsaken only puts your PvP trinket on cooldown for like 45 seconds or something like that.
Interesting. Okay, so maybe they're just trying to offset that.
Yeah, because it's like a specific CC breaker versus everything CC breaker that shares a complete cooldown with your PvP trinket. So they know that humans are not going to wear a trinket. They expect that undeads still will wear a trinket for PvP at least.
Yeah.
So,
Alright, and
anyway.
then the last thing they have is like, guess what? You can now breathe underwater indefinitely.
Yes!
Yeah! Well, actually, one of the most helpful things, and this is a silly story, like we're going off here. Back in the Burning Crusade, when I was playing my mage, and I was on a PvP server, Smolderthorn at one point in time was like pretty high population
just like
server.
swim away from people.
I would swim away from people who were trying to kill me because they
just
would
swim
end up
straight down.
dying, and I could live for like 10 minutes underwater.
That
or
is
something.
so funny.
Or it's like an extra minute you have or something back then.
That is hilarious.
And so, yeah, when I didn't want to try to kill somebody, I would go and hide in the water.
You just plunge to
and
the
wait.
depths.
I would wait for that to go.
You're so brave.
So guess what? I can stand there.
You can stand there
forever.
I can stand here forever. Good luck. Good luck killing me, sucker. Well, that's cool.
But yeah, so that is all of our racial traits in review so far. Of course, things are subject to change because we are just getting into the alpha
Right.
of Warlords of Draenor. So we will see what changes.
Yeah, and we had some questions. I feel like we addressed
There's a couple things.
We addressed a lot of them, like
Yeah.
whether the Night Elf will affect RBG groups or raids.
Yeah.
We talked about how Troll will affect leveling.
Yeah.
Do things like Will of the Forsaken and Every Man for Himself still feel balanced? And I mean, it makes a little bit of sense. One of the things we didn't address was how Worgen and Pandaren fit into all this.
They didn't touch them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to me, I feel like Pandaren have these buffs that are, like they have the double food buff. They have double rested XP.
Still pretty strong, I feel
They
like.
have, I think, like you get double the stats even on flasks and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and they have the active ability too.
Yeah, and so to me, it's just kind of like they had stuff that was like super beneficial to help them level quicker, and so maybe that's going to coincide with like trolls having a little bit of an XP thing, kind of making that a little even.
Some things are balanced between Alliance and Horde. That might make a little bit of sense.
Yeah, but to me, it's like for them, like they also seem like Goblin, where it's a lot of like kind of like support or utility traits and that kind of stuff. And then Worgens just weren't touched.
I feel like the Worgen kit fits really well with what Warlords of Draenor is going to be about. I mean, they have the 1% crit already. They've got some stuff. What is going to help you with your profession? Don't they get better skinning or something? Like, I don't even know.
Yeah, those are all the same for everyone.
Yeah, like I feel like a lot of their stuff is like either like not a huge deal, it makes sense, or like kind of innocuous.
They have the running wild, or they have that little speed increase, and then you have like the
you can turn into a human
turn
or
into
Worgen.
your own mount, and then you get the change, the aesthetic thing.
Right.
You can change from human to
And
Worgen.
movement speed and stuff like that. But other than that, I mean, it makes sense to me that they're not really messing with Worgen. A lot of what they've got makes sense. It sort of fits the feel of the Draenor like racial talents in general. So, I don't get messed with.
We'll see. We'll see how it all lines up when we get to playing. So.
Yep. But all right, guys.
That is it.
It's been a pretty long video, but I hope you guys enjoyed it because I mean, I don't know.
Yes.
I feel like the racial abilities and stuff like that is pretty interesting stuff. And the fact that Blizzard is actively taking an interest and taking action in order to make their game more, I'd say it's more accessible in a way. It gives you the ability to play what you want to play for whatever reasons you want to play it, not being forced to play a certain race just because of the racial abilities. But anyway, guys, hope you guys enjoyed the video. It was a lot of fun to make this one. Then we'll be bringing you guys another episode of Warlords Weekly here pretty soon.
All right.
But all right, guys, we'll see you next time. Peace!
Peace!